in the fam. All in the fam. Come on. It's all in the fam. All in the fam. Come on. Now get your hands up. 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 It's all in the fam.
Is up, fam. You already know who it is. It's Brianna Cherie, and you're listening to a video segment of All in the Fam. So it's September. It is Suicide Prevention Month. So what better way than to utilize this platform and talk about mental health? I have a special friend, Kevin. I call him Big Kev. I'll introduce him in a second, but again, mental health is very serious, is very important. And, you know, it's something that this generation, I think, is doing a great job of tackling and beating around the bush and getting ahead of the curve. So my favorite people from the Friend Zone podcast, they always introduce themselves, or they always start the podcast off by saying, we're going to explore mental health, mental wealth, and mental hygiene. Because who in the hell wants the musty brain? So I fucking love that, because
oh my gosh,
brain, you know they black.
Oh my gosh, you're something else.
Don't nobody want to be walking around with a musty brain.
You're right. You are right.
So Kevin, my man, introduce yourself.
Hello. So, for those who do not know me, my name is Kevin Spencer. I'm originally from Baltimore, Maryland. I currently live in Reno, Nevada, and just recently graduated last December from University of Nevada with what was that?
So Black Excellence.
Yeah. Thank you. But yes, I graduated with a bachelor's degree in human development and family studies. So for people who aren't aware of that, that's essentially just covering just development within children, within adults, just within humans in general, how they progress through the lifespan. And that involves mental development, emotional development, and physical development. So I graduated from University of Nevada. I'm currently still living in Reno, just taking a gap year because in order to pursue what I want to do involving psychotherapy, I still have to go to grad school. So just getting experience and just getting in the world and whatnot, and just actually recently completed my certification in teaching English as a foreign language. So just getting involved in that and just constantly trying to find ways just to help the world just one step at a time. But yes, that is who I am.
Oh my God. Look at you all grown up. I'm so proud of you. We only doing
Get out of here. They grow up so fast.
Awesome. So a couple months ago, I want to say, September now. It was either the end of June, I think, when you reached out to me. So you said, hey, Bree, I really think that you should tackle mental health on your podcast, and I would love to be a guest. And that really resonated with me, because I am not someone to be giving advice on mental health. I'll definitely open up the conversation, but I'm not a mental health professional. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist. But the fact that I can use this platform to build awareness of the seriousness of mental health, that's the part that I want to take. And since you're going to be in that field and be a healthcare professional, you are more than qualified to be on this podcast and talk about it. So there's two types of mental health conditions out there, two very serious types, depression and anxiety. We'll unpack those. Can you tell the fam a little bit about what depression is? I think everybody knows the general consensus of what it is, but some people kind of milk it down and don't realize how serious it is. So can you give us like the definition of.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're right about that. We can even just see in media or the way when we're interacting with other people, you hear people say so often, like, "Oh, I'm depressed," or "I'm depressed," which not saying that they aren't, but typically does tend to get overused. Unfortunately, making kind of like the severity of the condition kind of diminish. So essentially, depression is a form of a mood disorder. For long terms, you could call it clinical depression, also major depressive disorder. The main issue with depression, when it gets to verging into the aspect of actually being a mental disorder, is the persistence, one thing. And so the sense of like, yes, some people get into depressive states, usually caused by some form of external stimuli. However, with actual depression disorder, it is persistence. And I think around the estimated time of persistence is about 6 months. And then even if we look and dive into the actual, there's actually a manual called the DSM-5. It's for diagnosing mental disorders, and they have a set line of criteria for symptoms that co-align, and some of these symptoms include that I have right here: depressed mood for most of the day or every day, diminished interest in all activities, things that they would typically be interested in, sports, social activities. There typically is diminishment, and they don't have the same pleasure, and just overall diminished quality of life, the enjoyment in life. We also have just change in weight that can be significant. Also can be minor. Once again, these still are subjective and they depend upon person, which is why sometimes psychology can be kind of a hard field, because of the fact that there's so much subjectivity and not everything is black and white. It depends on various things involving that person's life. And also fatigue, thoughts of death, thoughts of suicide, and just overall sadness. So that's kind of the rundown overall of just what depression is.
So what do you think? Clearly, it's a multitude of things that go with depression for people. It can be how they were brought up. You know, it could be sexual abuse, physical abuse, verbal abuse.
Absolutely.
Just having an identity crisis, or just having too much pressure on yourself from societal standards or from family standards. Anything, it's pretty much anything can cause depression. Especially in this world where we're so surveillanced by ourselves, by our friends, by our family, social media, politics. Everything is surveillance. So what are some things that people can do to help with depression if they're diagnosed with it? I know there's medication, but do you think there's some other alternatives that people can utilize to help?
Absolutely. And I think one of the main things, because it gets to a point where there's certain issues where you're trying to stop the water from leaking out of the bucket, and you're just trying to patch that hole and patch it, but you're not actually fixing the foundation of it, which is the bottom of the bucket itself in this example. So needless to say, one of the main issues that has been a big promoter and perpetuator of depression to be ongoing is the fact we live in a society where it's very surface based. We can even see that in how we greet each other, especially within America. You say, "Hey, how are you doing?" But you don't actually mean that. No one actually says and actually wants to know how you're doing. And so needless to say, so much in our society, we're told, no, you're fine, you're doing fine, repress it, you got to keep going, got to keep moving on. Other people have problems, they don't have time for your problems. And that's one of the reasons why, and I've even experienced this with myself, why people tend to hold things in and they tend to just put on a mask and a smiley face instead of being open and authentic and honest and actually digging deeper and saying, how are you actually doing? And that's one of the major starts, is actually diving deeper into people's lives and looking to see where they need help, where they aren't necessarily showing it, because people, like I said, they want to be strong on their side, they want to be productive, they don't want to have problems. And now everyone wants to put on this image of being picture perfect, and we can see that in social media. No one's going to ever post a picture or a post of them like, oh, I'm doing terrible, or this one happened. Most of the time it's all good things. And so that's one start for sure. And second main thing is definitely supporting them in all ways, shapes, and possibles that can be, and just allowing them to know that they are not alone. I think one of the main things that can prevent people from really being able to tackle and overcome depression is when they feel alone. When you feel alone, it becomes much harder because you're in your head and you don't have other people, a support community, a family to tell you we're here for you and you're going to make it through. And that's why one of the main symptoms of depression is hopelessness. And that fuels the loneliness, fuels the hopelessness, because you don't have people around you telling you that you're going to make it through and that it's okay and that this state isn't going to overcome you. And that's one of the biggest things is allowing people who are going through depression to have that support, because that's just going to be the main difference maker within that.
Right. I kind of want to unpack that about being a support system for somebody who has depression. I have a very close friend of mine, sister of mine, who has depression. And me, personally, I don't understand because I've never been depressed. But it took me years. I have two friends who suffer from it. One friend, it took me years to recognize, whoa, this is serious.
Mm-hmm.
This is really serious. And again, what you said about our society being such a facade and everything is on the surface level, that's kind of how I handled situationships when people would express their depression or even anxiety, which we'll get into in a second. I would I would treat the situations as, oh, just get over it.
Mm-hmm.
Just buck up. Like, there's people going through worse things, or if I can do this, 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 and this, why can't you? It was a very selfish thing to say, and my actions showed it. But it took me years to finally be that supportive friend, to sit down and listen. So my advice to those of you listening or watching, if you have a friend or family member or a partner who is depressed or they're showing symptoms of depression, just sit down and listen. If you are a friend, a family member, spouse, partner, you don't necessarily need to be their therapist. You shouldn't be their therapist at all.
Yeah.
Unless you're actually a licensed professional, then go for it.
Right.
That's free healthcare right there. But 99 out of 100, you're not going to be a therapist. I'm not.
Right.
So if I can I tell these two friends, like, look, I'm here for you. I care about you. I listen. Like, I don't have to give them advice. I don't have to say anything. If I just sit there and let them tell me what's going on and actively give them my attention and my support and tell them that I love you and I want you here.
Right. It makes a world of difference.
It's going to make a big difference in someone's life.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think a lot of people who don't have depression or who don't understand, if they go into situations where they know people who have it, they just don't know how to cope with it. Take it from a selfish standpoint, like, oh, I don't know how to deal with that. That's their problem.
Right.
No, it's your problem if you care about it. If you care about it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And one of the most influential quotes I've heard recently is, just because something isn't your fault doesn't mean it's not your responsibility. And so you're absolutely right in the sense of, just because you don't understand it, just because you can't necessarily directly empathize with it, doesn't mean that you can't do something to help and support in some way. And like I said, and you touched on as well, it sometimes just being able to have someone there and listen and show that you care about them, not even though if you don't necessarily know exactly how they feel, the fact that you care, it makes a big difference for sure. And you're absolutely right about that. So
let's get into anxiety. I feel like I mixed the two together. I thought anxiety and depression were synonyms. Can you explain the difference of what anxiety is compared to depression?
So one thing I will say for sure, anxiety is actually an issue that I've experienced with my entire life. It only was until I got older and started diving more into psychology, which is why I just love psychology. I always just had so many questions about my brain, other people's brains. So it's actually an issue that I've struggled with within my life, but I've only recently been able to actually kind of come together my thoughts of like, how it affects me and affects the people around me. So needless to say, depression compared to depression, anxiety definitely compares a lot differently. So essentially, anxiety is also a form of disorder, but anxiety within itself. So everybody has anxiety. Everyone from here or there, they get anxiety from something, whether it's an event, a situation, their environment, and it's the anxiety in a sense is just feeling uneasy, feeling on edge, feeling like something in life just doesn't feel right. But when it starts to cross over into being a disorder, much like with depression, which is one of the similarities they share, is that once again it's persistent, and also that it has a impact on your daily life. And so with anxiety, there's various forms of the disorders, but some of the most common and most prominent ones we'll see, one is generalized anxiety disorder. And like I said before, within the DSM, they have the actual detailed definitions. And it's a chronic condition characterized by an excessive and persistent sense of apprehension with physical symptoms as well. And so that's just anxiety disorder as in a whole. And then generalized anxiety a disorder is a display of excessive anxiety or worried persistently for around 6 months about various things. So like I said, involving the fact that there are things that you worry about on a daily basis, whether it's health, whether it's family situations, but where it gets into being a disorder is when it's persistent and you're feeling these feelings for no reason, whether you're feeling on edge, whether you're feeling something just isn't right, you're feeling it on a persistent basis. And so that's where you see it kind of getting into the aspect of it's a mental health issue because your daily life is being severely impacted. And then you also have panic disorder, which essentially is when a person has recurring persistent panic attacks. And these are accompanied by symptoms, which some of the symptoms the DSM list is nausea, sweating, chest pain, chest discomfort. You start to feel shortness of breath. And all these symptoms kind of swell up and then peak to where you're just kind of like in just a state of just disarray. And so needless to say, the difference between these two are that depression, I would say, is more of a loss of pleasure in life and a loss of overall happiness, and anxiety still involving just general aspects of life, but your perception of it is different because you, unlike other people who may not feel like nearly as the amount of anxiety due to the fact that it's a disorder, you start to perceive things differently. Sense of you start to worry more often, and you start to just feel like everything in your life is not everything. It might just be one particular thing, but you feel like there's just something about it that just isn't right, and it's giving you these physical symptoms that are kind of disrupting your mental process, your physical functions and whatnot, and it just kind of leaves you dysfunctional all around.
Right. I feel like, from my understanding, I could be wrong, but as you said, depression is more of a prolonged disinterest in life, satisfaction and desire. And anxiety is more so maybe kind of in the moment and focused on a particular thing that's giving you anxiety. So I feel like with the pandemic going on, job loss, unemployment, uncertainty, there's so much anxiety among people.
Absolutely.
Hopefully.
Absolutely.
They could have a great family structure with friends, probably finished, graduated school, top of their class. You know, life is good in those aspects. But when it comes to finances, it's just anxiety because they're unemployed. You know, not many places are hiring right now because COVID-19. So I feel like that anxiety, I feel like is focused in an area. But I could be wrong. Did that kind of hit it on?
No, you're definitely right. And just in the sense of like you just said, a lot of things within their life can be great, but then when it comes to finances, that gives them anxiety. And one of the most important things is in our society, we like to typically compartmentalize and think you can separate things here. But one of the main aspects that people need to realize about mental health is that it transcends into other aspects of your life. And so even when you think that you just have these negative feelings and negative perceptions on this particular aspect of your life, little do you know, your mind is still processing processing that at a subconscious level, which is going to spill over to other aspects of your life. And it gets to the point where you sadly don't even realize it, because you think you have it under control. But that's where it comes to the point where if you attack mental health as the base foundation, you're going to begin to see all aspects of your life healing and improving, because you're attacking the main force. And that's looking at it more of a holistic approach, which I think is the best approach, because like I said, a lot of things in our lives, mentally, emotionally, physically, socially, it's holistic, and they all affect each other in some way, shape, or form, whether we see it or we don't see it. They have some sort of effect, positive and negative.
Right. It sucks. It sucks, man.
It does.
I'd say that from a place of, I don't want to like bring other people down, but because I'm blessed that I didn't have to go through depression or anxiety. I've been anxious about things, but I've never gone through an anxiety attack or a panic attack. But because I've never gone through those things, I'm over here learning so I can be, I can influence somebody to get help.
Absolutely.
Somebody to get help. Because again, like you said with that quote, just because, to paraphrase, if we're not going through it, doesn't mean it doesn't matter. It
Absolutely.
matters.
It does.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry. And I just want to point out one main thing, in the sense of like, people don't realize, just because of the fact that you think you can't help that person in the way that they need, like we said before, one, you're helping them and just being there, supporting them. But then also you have to realize that you are learning from that person. When you were listening to them, or when you were listening to what they're going through, whether it's anxiety, whether it's depression, you are taking that in. And I like to think in sense of like within life, when we meet different people, we share our gifts, we share our ideas and our thoughts, and that's how we grow, when we meet different people with different situations. So if you approach it with that mindset of, this is a new situation that I may not know much about, but I can learn from this person, you can take that information and help someone else out, because with that experience that you gain through the situation, you can go and apply it to another situation where someone else needs help, because there's just so many people with these issues that we don't know have these issues, but it's because, like I said, everything is on the surface, and so people do a good job of hiding it, but it may come up in a time where you may not have expected. But I'm not saying you're going to be able to fix everyone's problem, but you're going to be able to do some good and help someone in some way, shape, or form, which is just the main thing at the end of the day, is just being able to help someone in some way, whether it's just one person, 10 people, 100, just being able to make a difference in the world, Now,
I can complain about this generation and how messed up we are, but there's some good in this generation. And like I said,
absolutely.
This is the best time to tackle mental health, because I feel like so many people are on board to tackle mental health. Our parents' generation, our grandparents' generation, if you had a therapist, one, you were rich. Two, you really had some problems if you went to a therapist. That was the mindset.
Yeah, the stigma.
The stigma in the Black community sucked up.
Yeah.
God.
Absolutely.
That's stereotypical, mantra within our community. We don't talk about mental health.
You're right. Growing up in Baltimore, Maryland, one of the cities with like the most predominant Black communities. Yeah, I've definitely experienced that a lot myself, and there's even family members to this day that I didn't even know or realize had these issues until I got older. One, with me becoming older, becoming more aware and growing in my knowledge, and also just with the cultural shift and that kind of trend and values that people are growing into of caring for one another and being there for each other. So you're right, and especially within the Black community, like I said, we've always kind of, just from the history that we've seen seen within our race and within our people, there's just always that needed sense of toughness, because when you experience so much oppression and so much negativity and hate, you feel like you need to always have this tough skin. You always need to have this tough exterior, and you can't let people get to you, which ends up being was counterproductive. It is counterproductive because now, okay, yes, you're tough from things that you might not even need to necessarily be tough from, and now you're also hardening yourself from people who actually care about you and love you and actually could be able to help you in these issues.
Like what you said before, your mental state, your mindset, your mental health feeds into the different buckets of your life.
Absolutely.
So I actually want to bring you back on this podcast for Black History Month, because I kind of want to talk about this topic again, but specifically.
Absolutely.
So we're gonna save all that energy.
I would be more than happy.
For
Absolutely.
February. But yeah, again, this is the best time. One, the outlet within media. Yeah, social media can be toxic, but you can also use social media for your advantage, for other people's
Absolutely.
advantage. So many people are coming out and talking about these things, using their platforms, being an advocate for others. And, just even right now during the pandemic, people ain't got nothing else to do but to sit and talk, hear themselves talk, hear other people talk, what we're doing.
Exactly.
And I feel like access to help is much easier.
Yeah, absolutely.
On this device, there's apps.
Exactly.
There's BetterHelp. I think that's an app. There's Talkspace. So those are two apps that are always advertised. And I read their reviews. There's real licensed therapists at rates that are individualized for people with particular issues of a certain demographic. You name it, you can filter it down to a therapist that you need to talk to help you with your problems.
Absolutely.
Go the traditional route, go see a therapist. There's multiple ways, even though the healthcare is expensive and so many things, I feel like the access to it is much better than it was before, especially for mental health right now.
I agree. There's so many resources, and it's a mixture of the increase in access and also just kind of the diminishment and that negative stigma of, if you have mental health issues, you're crazy or you're psycho, or if you go to a therapist, you're a nut job or something. But there's so many benefits outside of just needing help within mental disorders. I mean, people still experience traumatic events. People still experience kind of negative factors from just negative events and negative stimuli in their life. And just within their environment. And so there's just a lot of benefits that can come from it, whether it's just trying to essentially become more organized, be calmer, be able to be more focused in certain situations. There's so many various aspects of mental health that it's just the diminishment of that stigma helps people to realize, like, because there's so many different aspects of mental health, you don't always just have to bring that negative stigma, and also to realize that everyone has a mental health state that needs some tweaking, some growing, some help, or just some overall just fine tuning. Like you said, you don't want a musty brain, so just kind of keep it clean and fresh to stay productive. Oh my goodness.
Yep, awesome. Well, Kevin, I'm gonna have to close us out.
Absolutely.
Any closing remarks for the people?
I just want to push people just to continue just to be real. It's just one of those things where it's in our society, it's so hard to really find, real people who are open and honest and not just kind of conformed by the whole shallow society we live on. And so just be real and just spread love and just spread care. There's just so much negativity. We see it all the time on media, and it's just, people don't realize, time is just not guaranteed, and it's just, you should be pushing to just live life to the fullest each and every day and be there for people and just be the best person you can be and improve on yourself and help others improve each and every day. So I just really push people just to support that narrative and support other people. That's all I have to say. Support people and love people. Be positive.
Yes. My closing comments, those of you listening, if you're going through depression, anxiety, just know that you're loved.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't hear the words "I love you," then you're gonna hear it from me, even if I don't know you.
Yep.
I love you, boo boo.
Yep.
Loved. You are.
I agree. Tell someone you love them.
Yes, and if you're going through depression and anxiety and you haven't got treatment, take the necessary steps, the healthy necessary steps to get help.
Absolutely.
Take that first step to talk to somebody. We got to be there for each other. And if you know somebody, and again, I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to the followers. If you guys know somebody who is depressed or suffer from anxiety, be considerate. Listen, be there for them. Don't be so pushy, but just let them know that you're there for them and let them come to you. So that pretty much wraps it up. So Kevin, thank you again. Appreciate you. Love you.
Love you too. Love you too, Mama Bree. It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yes, I need to book a trip to California because I'm sick of Illinois, man.
Oh, come visit. It's expensive and there's a lot of fires, but it's still fun.
Oh yeah, you're right. So never mind, I'm gonna pass that. So
oh my
I can miss you with that. All right, Kevin. Thank
All
you
right.
so much. I'll see you.
Absolutely. Take care. See ya.
All in.